A spirit once marked a little girl and waited years to come back for her.
Listen closer. Do you hear that? Who are you?
Hello everyone, I'm Naim and welcome back to the third episode of Thursday Terror. Tonight's story comes from the Philippines, from a quiet village of Samar where the nights go completely dark and the jungle feels just a little too close. This story is not a folklore shaped by time. This is a memory, clear, personal, and deeply unsettling. My friend Aldrin Panos shared a real experience from when he was just 18 years old, witnessed something that would follow him long after that night had ended. It all started with a scream, a missing girl, and a place the villagers refused to go near. But what they found that night wasn't just her, it was something ancient, something that had been watching, waiting, and slowly claiming her for years. And when it finally revealed itself, it just didn't take her, it spoke. So, before we begin, sit in a quiet room and turn the lights off, because some spirits don't chase you, they choose you. This is Aldrin's story.
A Filipino legend. Engkanto.
Hello, my name is Altran Panos. Tonight, I want to take you back to my home province of North Cotabato in the Philippines. I want to tell you a story that is a true part of my life. It happened in my ancestral barangay. Barangay is our word for small village. This is a memory that has haunted me since I was 18 years old. It is a reminder that some places never forget the people who walk through them. It was a summer of unbearable heat back then. We had constant brownouts. That is what we call long power outages, where the whole village goes pitch black. One night, while the village was silent and dark, a scream tore through the air. It was a mother's scream, and it was loud enough to make my blood turn cold. I ran outside and found a young boy sobbing in the middle of the dirt road. He said he couldn't find his sister Elena. Elena had gone outside to get some fresh air because she was feeling sick, but she had vanished into the shadows of the jungle. I joined the other villagers with our flashlights. We headed toward the part of the barangay that everyone avoided. The houses there were abandoned and rotting. The elders always told us that the land there was sumpa, which means cursed or spiritually unclean. We reached a bend in the creek, what we call a sapa here, where the water was stagnant and smelled of rotting leaves. The mud there was thick and black, pulling at our boots like quicksand. Suddenly, Elena's brother Ricardo froze. He dropped to his knees and reached deep into the sludge beneath some jagged, mossy rocks. We all leaned in our flashlights, expecting to see Elena's hand or a piece of clothing. But as Ricardo pulled his arms back, he was dragging a heavy, limp weight. It was a young baboy ramo, a wild forest boar. These animals are usually fast and dangerous, but this one was like dead weight. It was a solid mass of muscle and coarse, wire-like hair, but it was completely senseless. The most unsettling part was its head. While the rest of its body was soaking wet from the creek, its head was encased in a thick gray mass of dried, hardened mud. It looks like it had been buried alive or placed there as part of some dark ritual. It didn't breathe. It didn't move. It was just there. The moment Ricardo's skin touched the boar hair again, the atmosphere shifted instantly. It felt like a cold wind had just blown through a furnace. The air became heavy and hard to breathe. Ricardo was the quietest, most gentle man I knew. But as he stood up, he wasn't the boy I knew anymore. His body became rigid, and his veins were popping out of his neck like thick ropes. He began pacing in the mud, his head low, moving with heavy, rhythmic steps of a predator. When three of his largest ankles rushed in to pin him down and calm him, he didn't even break a sweat. He simply flicked his shoulders, and these grown men, strong farmers who worked the land, were tossed aside like they were made of paper, landing hard in the dirt. But it was his face that haunted me most. When the flashlight beam hit his eyes, they weren't human. They were wide, glazed, and burning with a primitive, ancient rage that belonged to something from the deepest, darkest part of the jungle. While the chaos with Ricardo was happening, the rest of us pushed further into the thick, thorny bushes toward the abandoned ruins, the place everyone feared. That was when we finally saw her. Elena was lying at the base of a massive, gnarled tree. Her body twisted in a way that looked impossible for a person to comfortably sleep. She was completely senseless. Her skin was deathly pale, and her clothes were bone dry, which made no sense because the rest of us were soaking wet from the humidity in the mud. It was as if she hadn't walked here herself, but had been placed there, like a doll that someone was finished playing with. When I touched her arm, she was as cold as a stone, but her eyes were half open, rolled back into her head, staring at something in the darkness that none of us could see. Terrified, we ran to fetch Mang Inteng. He is an albulario. It means a traditional Filipino faith healer who understands the word of the unseen. As Mang Inteng approached the house where we had taken Elena, a voice came from inside. It was Elena's voice, but it sounded ancient, cold, and proud. "I can see the healer," the voice laughed. "He cannot harm me." When we stepped into the small wooden room, the atmosphere changed completely. The air was so thick and heavy it felt like walking into a wall of water. Every breath felt like a struggle. Mang Inteng stood over Elena, his face carved with deep lines of focus. He took out a small glass vial of lana, our local blessed coconut oil, and the scent of it, sweet and heavy, filled the room. As he began his bulong, his rhythmic whispered prayers, he smeared oil in the sign of the cross on her forehead and palms. The reaction was like a stride. Elena's body didn't just move. It snapped into a position that should have broken her bones. Her back arched, so high off the mat that only her head and heels were touching the floor. Then she let out a scream. It wasn't a human voice anymore. It was a high-pitched, vibrating shriek that sounded like rusty metal being ground against glass. The sound was so sharp, it felt like it was glowing at the inside of the skull. It feels like it was glowing at the inside of my skull, making my ears ring and the old windows of the house rattle under flames. Mang Inteng stepped back, his face turning a sickly, pale gray in the flickering candlelight. I had never seen a man so experienced look so shaken. I had never seen a man so experienced looked so shaken. He leaned in and whispered, his voice trembling like a dry leaf. "This is no ordinary ghost," he said. "This is a powerful Engkanto." To those listening who aren't familiar, an Engkanto is a nature spirit from our oldest Filipino legends. Powerful beings that live without trees. Powerful beings that live within the trees, the rocks, and the earth itself. They are not human, and they do not follow our laws. Mainting looked at Elena's twisted body and then back at us, his eyes wide with a deep, ancestral fear. "It didn't just find her tonight," he muttered, his breath hitching. "This thing is ancient. It has been marking her, stalking her from the shadows of the forest for a very, very long time. It has just been waiting for the right moment to claim what it thinks is its property." The silence in the room was shattered when the thing inside Elena finally spoke. It wasn't a human voice anymore. It was a dry, rattling sound like a dead leaf skittering across a wooden floor. It began saying something but we couldn't understand. Then Mang Inteng described as a memory from her childhood that none of us knew. Years ago, when Elena was just a little girl playing tago-taguan. That's what we call hide and seek here. Around those crumbling, moss-covered ruins, she had made a fatal mistake. In her excitement to find a hiding spot, she had strayed off the trail and stepped directly into the spirit's hidden path, a boundary where our world meets the world of the Engkanto. It had marked her right then and there, like a hunter tagging an animal in the wild. It wasn't interested in her as a child. It was a patient predator. It had spent over years crouched in the shadows of the jungle, watching her grow, watching her every breath, simply waiting for the night she was ripe enough for it to finally step out of the dark and claim her as its own. Then the spirit turned Elena's head slowly. It looked directly at me. "You," the voice said, pointing a trembling finger at me. "You are like a son to me. I know you, Aldrin. You should not have come to this place. Tell the others to stay away, or I will be angry." I was only 18. I felt a cold hand squeeze my heart, and I couldn't move or speak. It knew my name. Mang Inteng straightened his back, his eyes fixed on Elena's glassy stare. He began to shout his final commands, the pangontra, our local words of protection used to cast out evil. His voice wasn't a whisper anymore. It was a roar that seemed to push back against the darkness in the room. He looked at us and said that we needed a hudyat, a sign that the pact was broken, the spirit was actually departing. He told the entity that if it were truly living, it must snap a limb from the ancient gnarled mango tree standing in the center of our yard. We waited in a silence so deep you could hear the blood thumping in your ears. For a few seconds, even the crickets in the jungle went quiet. Then, crack, a sound like a high-powered rifle echoed through the night. The heavy, thick branch of the tree didn't just break. It was torn away as if by a giant, invisible hand. Immediately, a violent, freezing wind slammed into the house, bursting the windows open. It wasn't a normal breeze. It was a howl of cold air that smelled of wet earth and ancient rotting moss. The wooden floorboards beneath our feet groaned and trembled, and for a terrifying second, I thought the house would be ripped from its foundations. Then as quickly as it had arrived, the wind died down. The heavy weight lifted from my chest, and the room grew deathly still. It was gone. The thing that had claimed my name and Elena's soul had finally retreated back into the black heart of the forest. Elena collapsed, totally senseless. When she woke up days later, she remembered nothing. She didn't remember the boar, the scream, or the warning she gave to me. But I remember. In the Philippines, we know that some spirits live when they are told, and others live only to remember the way back. I still wonder why it called me its son. I still don't know. To this day, I don't have the answers. That was just one small, dark experience from my own life. I have many more stories like this from the islands. I have more stories to share. And if this one is selected, I will send the others to you soon.
That was the Filipino legend, Engkanto. A chilling reminder that some things don't just haunt places, they haunt people. Thank you, Aldrin, for trusting us with your story and for sharing a memory that still lingers in the shadows of summer. Your experience reminds us that not everything in this world follows the rules we understand, and some stories are never truly over. Now, to our listeners, if you have ever felt something you couldn't explain, if you have ever walked away from a place that you didn't feel right, Ars the Terror is open for you. Send your stories to our email, storyforapocalypse@gmail.com, and your stories might be the next one we hear in the dark. Now, if you enjoyed the story, then don't forget to subscribe and turn on the bell so you never miss any of our videos, because we'll keep uncovering these untold stories and we'll keep bringing these stories into our channel. Until, stay safe, stay haunted, and stay tuned to the apocalypse. Good night.
Storyteller.